name tag. Okay, let's go ahead and start, since we're pretty full anyway. I'm Kyle Oliver. I'm going to give a 10-second pitch for my new newsletter. I am about to go to grad school in learning technology design, and I'm committed to sharing as much of what I learn as possible with the church. So if you go to kyleoliver.net /newsletter, you can subscribe, and I hope you will, because I think there'll be good stuff on there. The slides for this presentation are at bit.ly/eform16 ICP for integrated communication planning. Those bit.lys are case sensitive, so make sure you go lowercase. Okay, so let me just say before I begin a little bit. I am not. What's that?
There you go.
Should I slouch?
Yeah, or point the camera.
I think I'm going to move the camera off the wall. Sorry. Is that better? Okay. I'm surprised I'm not slouching. So I should say I am not primarily a communications person. I am primarily a formation person. I reached out to lots of colleagues who are primarily communications people to teach this workshop, which was a highly requested workshop, which I think is reflected in the number of people here in the room. And you would be very, for those of you who are in the Episcopal Church, you would probably know many of the communicators I reached out to about possibly giving this workshop. They're all great and they're all busy. So you're stuck with me, but a huge part of the job that I do helping to lead this community is a community, and that I've been doing more broadly for the Center for the Ministry of Teaching is a communications ministry as much as it is a faith formation ministry. So I hope that what I've learned will apply well. I've spent a lot of time in congregations, and actually the church job that I'm about to start to help pay for grad school, part of my role will be communications. So maybe we'll do version 2 of this next year, and I'll have more suggestions. But hopefully the examples are relevant for you, and hopefully this is useful. But that's my disclaimer. You know, I'm not a traditional church communicator. So I want to just get a sense for who's here, because I suspect many of you are communicators, and I want to learn from you as we go. And I want to learn a few other things. So raise your hand if you're on a church staff. Okay, that's probably 80%. I'm not surprised by that. Okay, how many of you are volunteers in the role you're here for? Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for taking the time. We know it's hard on weekdays, and we're glad you're here. Anyone sort of here as an individual, not necessarily associated with a ministry, but you have a personal ministry? Sometimes folks come like that. Great. Oh, yes. Yeah, great example. Good. Okay, so how many of you would say that you are a communicator as a significant part of your role? Okay, probably you know, at least 60-65%. How many educator or formation minister where that's your primary? And you know, you don't have to pick one or the other. Okay, maybe 25% or so.
Same online.
Same online. Okay, great. Oh, thank you. Sorry.
Back up again, please.
Oh, sure. eForm 16 ICP.
I see.
Cool. How about church administrators? Any church administrators here? Partly, I'm seeing some, what do we call this? The so-so symbol. Yeah. Okay, great.
It's the multi-hat role.
Multi-hat role. Yeah, that's good.
Megan Drew online.
Okay. Megan.
Drew online. Just raise your hand.
Oh, okay, great.
So we have button.
Yeah, good, thank you. Cool. I thought you said she drew.
No, she's
Yeah,
Drew.
but
Her name is
Megan Drew.
Megan Drew. Got it. Hi, Megan. I understand now. Okay. How many lay ministers in the room? Okay, probably 20-30%. Ordained. Okay, those are the only two choices.
lay minister. Culture. Sounds.
Oh, sorry. That maybe that's overly Episcopal language. We would say that all baptized Christians are ministers. So if we do that again, lay people. Let me say that. Okay. Okay. Much bigger number. Helpful. Helpful. Thank you. We all learn to speak each other's language slowly. Okay. How many of you are in churches primarily for like why you're here? You're in a congregation. Okay. In adjudicatory, diocese, presbytery, conference, synod, convention. Did I get them all? Okay. District. Oh, district. Got it. Parachurch ministries, publishers, other folks like that. Okay. A few. Yeah. And probably lots of multi-hats too. Okay. Real quick. I'll just go through these. This is like, do you feel reasonably confident on these platforms? You know, so we'll go Facebook. Okay. Twitter. Okay. Some down. Instagram. Some more up, some down. Pinterest. Okay, quite a few Pinterest. Cool. Tumblr. I'm always interested to see. Well, Tumblr's so interesting. Okay. Blogs. Okay. Yeah, lots of blogs. Website software. Okay. Yeah, almost everyone. Newsletters. Almost everyone. Okay. Cool. Cool. All right. What makes you anxious about this topic of integrated planning? Chris, were the webinar folks more or less in line with what we were seeing in here?
Yes.
Percentages. Okay.
There's Emily kind of said it's hard finding time for it all.
Yeah. Finding. Yeah. Amen. Yeah. Finding time for it all is anxiety producing. What about what else is anxiety producing about this? Sir.
It can all change.
Training my staff.
Training staff. Yeah. That it can all change tomorrow from the webinar. Suzanne.
Best use of time.
Best use of time.
Hierarchy.
Make sure you repeat those.
Yeah. Best use of time. Hierarchy.
Getting buy-in for a vision and the strategy towards the vision.
Getting buy-in for a vision and the strategy toward the vision. Yeah. Yeah. Michael.
You make this whole plan and then you check the analytics and you find out it didn't work at all.
Yeah.
So you have to recreate it.
Yeah. You make a plan and you look at the numbers and it turns out the plan didn't work. Chris.
Finding self-discipline to get it done, be consistent, encouraging a parent to share, take photos, smooth integration of different modes of communication.
Did you in the room? Did you all hear those? I don't have to repeat them because they. Oh, okay.
You have to repeat them quickly.
Yeah. Well, the people in the webinar saw it on the chat, right?
Yeah,
but there's some people in here. Okay, got it. There were a lot of them.
Just say webinar answered.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. We'll keep moving. I know a couple people raised your hand. It was like by the time we hit. Sorry. It's been a long day. Smooth integration. Yeah, that's a big one. That's a big one. Okay, so to the extent that it's a separate question, what are you hoping to learn today? Okay. How to do it all, how to make a plan, cool. Okay, well, the trajectory we're gonna take looks kind of like this, Canva only has so many little. Oh, sorry, I forgot I can't do that.
This is Webinar Plus, Kyle.
It says I'm the one who's been hammering on that the Webinar Plus room you have to stay here.
Just so you know, there's 46 people online more than here, so.
Yeah, yeah.
It's there.
So this is weighted about the same as this. So schizophrenic, as I said yesterday. So let me point. I want to talk about audience, and then about planning, and then about scheduling, and then about products. So that's our sort of trajectory here. So we'll hopefully get to the things people mentioned. Okay, let me do some hat tips here. These are the resources I highly recommend and the folks that I learned from. This first one is the source of my sort of content mantra. Julie Lytle, who's here, her mantra is message, method, and then media. If you're like me, you might be super enthusiastic about media. I just love getting in there and making stuff. That's great, but if you're not thinking about what you want to say and how you're going to say it, the tail will wag the dog. So just having that mantra in my head, message, method, media, super, super helpful. Social Media Gospel, I think, is just a really easy read. Meredith is really smart. There's a second edition now. The cover's red. Get the second edition. It's got updated stuff. Really, really good. Great group. Great book, I think, for training staff. There's lots of appendices with useful how-to type content. Meredith's really great, I think, at helping people learn how to write for the web, which is very different from writing for other formats, magazines, etc. Maybe closer for writing for a magazine than writing an academic paper, say. This presentation is very much inspired by an exercise that is woven into Jim Naughton and Rebecca Wilson's book, Speaking Faithfully. They are church communication consultants extraordinaire. And if you can only buy one of these books, I probably recommend this one, especially for this topic. If you're a church communicator, I just think this book is about as essential as it gets. It's just so good. They are Episcopalians, but they are, I think, very intentional about, sort of their whole point is lose the jargon, lose the denominational specific stuff, not the ethos, but the verbiage, the terminology. So sort of by its nature, I think it applies more broadly, and that's true of all of these books. But we're gonna follow a chart fairly similar to the exercise in Speaking Faithfully, and so I always encourage people to buy the book because I feel very indebted to them in presenting this. Okay, so our first question, I'm convinced, always has to be, who are you trying to reach? So we've got some different audiences here. I think one thing I've learned from Meredith is, and from Jim and Rebecca, is don't forget that your current members are probably your most important audience. While it's true that communications, to borrow the subtitle of Jim and Rebecca's book, communications are evangelism. They're not sort of just evangelism. And so the members of your church or the audience of your parachurch ministry or whatever, are one and probably the most important of your audiences. But people you have not met yet are also a hugely significant one, and are usually much harder to reach well, fluently, in the right places, in the right ways. So a huge part of this work, I think, is audience. And I want to start with an exercise. There's going to be a lot of these little links to exercises here. So at bit.ly/eform16AUD for audience, there is an exercise here that I would like us to. Oh, sorry. And if you're in the slides, all these links are live. So if you're in the slides, you can also just click and follow. What it will do is prompt you. This is a really nifty trick. What it will do is prompt you to make a copy. When you follow that link, it's going to take you here, and it's going to say, would you like to make a copy of audience analysis exercise? So click make a copy. And if you're not currently logged into Google, you may lose some functionality here. I don't know if you'll be able to edit the document, so you may have to take a little detour and log into Google. So this is adapted from a couple of places, including Speaking Faithfully, and also a great secular book that I highly recommend in this world. And it's David Meerman Scott's The New Rules of Marketing and PR. He's a business writer, and I think it's an excellent book. I wasn't the content editor of it, but I was the sort of manuscript editor of this book. So I sort of lucked into a great way to get all kinds of fantastic training for this role that I'm in now, and I really recommend that book to you. It's in its like 5th edition now.
Could you repeat the title, please?
Sure. It's at the bottom of this exercise,
Oh, okay.
and it's called The New Rules of Marketing and PR. So, so what I'd like to do is give you all a few minutes. I said this is going to be an active workshop here, and we're going to take our time and do some exercises as we go. So what I'd like you to do here is think about some of the folks you're trying to reach. Now, I said before, you know, your current members are an audience, but really your current members are many different audiences. Most of our congregations are not completely homogenous, and so there are you know, different kinds of audiences here. So I've walked you through an example of young suburban families, maybe because that's the sort of background I came from. I know this audience pretty well. I've taken a shot at what they value, how they spend their discretionary time, what they're sort of looking for, and different ways where I think this particular audience can be reached. So I'd like you to take a couple of minutes, and if you're having a problem with the technology, get out a piece of paper and you know, I can make this bigger. You can you don't have to do this sheet of paper or this exercise on your computer if you don't want to, but I did want to give you some worksheets you could take with you if you like. So take let's do 5 to 10 minutes. I'll take your temperature in 5 minutes. But think about an audience. If you're with someone from your church, feel free to work in pairs. Use your inside voice. I don't know how to suggest working in pairs on the webinar. That I guess you could chat each other. But take some time and think about a significant audience or two. Are there questions about the exercise? Does that make sense? Okay, go for it. If you have questions, pull me over, and if the webinar has questions, Chris, help me snag them. Everybody cool on the webinar, Chris? What's up? Remind me to go to Addison 101 at 5:20.
They can't hear you.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yes, our webinar folks. I'm asking Siri to remind me. You're good. And be patient with your computers if your connectivity is not great. We got a lot of people in this room. There. Is that font big enough that if you have to do it on paper, you can do it on paper?
Right, but I mean, I think that now right.
Snarky.
What's that?
Always for like this question.
Oh,
A little snarky.
well, I was too, right?
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Right, but there's a period of the time.
Yes. These are the ones. There's the
All right, we just passed the 5-minute mark. Are you feeling like you want to come back and talk a bit? Okay, great. So let's workshop a couple of these. Who's got one they want to talk through? Suzanne.
Older married and single people value relationship, tradition, community, high quality worship experience, spend their time volunteering at church and other places, with grandchildren, with peers, watching TV, reading, seeking high quality worship, volunteer opportunities, social opportunities, and adult education. How can we reach them? At worship and church events, e-newsletter, email, telephone, Facebook.
Okay, I didn't get all of it, but that wasn't too bad. Constructive comments on that? That's resonating with me. Things you'd want to add? This is one of those. So one of the things that David Meerman Scott recommends, well, everybody who does this work recommends what they call, you know, and don't let this particular word scare you off, but in the marketing world, they call it buyer personas. So, you know, we might choose a different word for buyer, but I like that idea of personas. So it can be helpful to, a lot of these exercises, they recommend that you actually like give this person a name, you know, you want to be respectful about that, but, or sort of a type kind of name. In the, which election was this? Was this 2008 when we had NASCAR dads and soccer moms and, you know, there were a few, those are what, Joe Sixpack, yeah, Joe Sixpack. Those are personas, right? Those are a sort of profile, and you're not gonna get everyone, obviously, all the usual cliches. Demographics aren't destiny. Everyone's a unique snowflake, as Megan Castellan would say, et cetera. But given that, there are, people who are similar to each other, and this exercise, resonates with me. Or I'm sorry, these answers. Anyway, point being, this particular group, older, married, and single people, like, this is where I substitute my parents, right? Like, this looks like my parents, like, to a T. So I think that this does sound like how they spend their time, et cetera. And, form little tests in your head think about who are the people, who are these specific individuals in our community who might fit this persona, and what do you know about them, et cetera. You want to do another one? So who's got one very different from that one? What's that?
Ask the webinar.
Sure. Yeah. We asked the webinar. You'll have to relay them. But do you have all the categories?
I'm just asking you to ask them.
Oh yeah. No. Feel free, webinar folks, if you want to chime in as well. I don't know. Chris can, I guess, relay a whole category's worth. Let's do one more in the room first. If a webinar person wants to do one, start sending us the categories, and we'll do one more in the room to give you a chance to type. Nuria.
So I'm a parachurch, filling this out. So who are they? It's West Michigan Mainline Church Leaders.
West Michigan Mainline Church Leaders. Okay, here's how specific that is. It's a specialized ministry, but you're really putting a fine point on it. Great.
They value having a future and engaging young people.
Great.
They are spending their discretionary time trying to do good and serving in the community, which I'm not sure how accurate that is, but it's accurate for the ones I know. They are seeking strategies for renewal and becoming cool. Maybe just I'm treating a slight level of cynicism.
Yeah, sure. Some cynicism might sneak into this. That's not the worst thing.
Relevance that we don't need. And then how can we reach them one-on-one with pastors and Christian ed teachers, mass mailing through their denominational tutorials.
Cool. Anybody have something they want to add to that? You got one from the webinar? Cool.
All right, here we go. Young people interested in social justice, gathering with like-minded people.
Okay. Young people interested in social
gathering with
justice.
Like-minded people.
Okay.
Actions that are improving the situation for some and bettering the world. Online entertainment. As then how they respond. How do they use their discretionary time as online entertainment / reading news, commentary online, coffee shops, and then outdoor activities. What are they seeking? Social support, advocacy training, connections with like-minded folks. And then learning how to make an impact on social media, presence at protests or other gatherings for justice.
Cool. These are good. I think you all are hitting this well. Anybody have a little anecdote about this? Is there an experience you've had reaching a certain group, something that's come up in an interesting way? I just wonder if anyone can help us make this a little concrete in your individual practice. I'll think too. Please.
I'm trying to look for the documents to pull it up, but we use this Mission Insight program that identifies groups that have a name and an alias to them.
Yeah.
And so when I was doing the work, we read as a group, the description. Folks just kept looking at each other and said, "Oh gosh, they pegged us." And I'm trying to get the language, but it's very indicative of household patterns, travel patterns, things like that.
Yeah. So this exercise was part of a broader mission training in this person's congregation, and it's just remarking that sometimes you read one of these and you really feel like, oh wow, we've pegged them.
Scary.
Yeah. I have like a few. We're gonna go down the road. Let me preview some things to help us think about how this can be a little more concrete. So, for instance, in the CMT, we have 5 or 6 different audiences, and you'll see some of these as we go. And a lot of them are church leaders. The CMT serves primarily church leaders. We don't do a whole lot of direct to church member type things. So we do like no content during Holy Week, which is kind of weird for a church organization, right? Holy Week is like, for liturgical congregations, this is prime time, so much to do, so much to engage. And we have just said, leaders are not looking at our stuff for probably 10 days before Holy Week, or 10 days before Easter, and probably, a few days after. So we do a little bit of wishing you a blessed Holy Week, and, a few other things. But because we are very focused on reaching leaders, we just don't try during the time when we know they are just, totally buried with things at church. So next year, as the lead up to to eFormation, you might notice that you're not going to hear from us during that time, and it's less because we're not busy. In fact, in parachurch ministries, those of you who are there and don't maybe do lots of heavy lifting in a congregation, those tend to be light times for us for the very same reasons. And so we tend to, in the CMT, do sort of internal work those weeks because we know our audiences just aren't listening to us. So that's an example of how getting really specific about who your audience is can lead into some of the decisions you make. So that's why this exercise is useful. So we're trying to narrow that. I keep coming back this week to that image that Albert shared yesterday of the communications gap. All of these exercises are intended to help us narrow the gap. Anything else anyone wants to add? I know we've been talking for a bit here. Anyone online? Okay, so once you've got your audience, then we can sort of move into the Lytle cycle, the message method media. So, what do we want to say? And I don't know if this is the right Venn diagram, but I've got on this one side factors related to your audience, and then factors related to you. I don't know if that's quite the right way to say it. Maybe not. But where those things intersect is your message for your audience. So let's make that a little more concrete. So I used to work at a hyper traditional Anglo-Catholic. For those of you who aren't Episcopalians, I used to tell people I work in a medieval Catholic church. It's a Roman Catholic would walk into this church and say, that looks very old. Council of Trent old. That was the kind of church that I was working in. And I think, what Albert said yesterday about, lots of young people today are seeking something ancient and something sacramental and mystical. And that's certainly our experience, was our experience at St. Paul's. I'm not there anymore, so I shouldn't speak. But certainly one of our audiences at St. Paul's was this sort of overworked, under quote unquote fed DC young adult type. So here's an attempt at a message, and this is around promoting events. Not all of your messages are to promote an event. And this is an ad we did there. If you can't read it, send your heart soaring with the gift of music. Reconnect with God and neighbor to prepare for Christmas. And then details. So, a few comments. I think in hustle bustle DC, the fact that this image is mostly darkness felt invitational to a certain sort of segment of this audience, right? Like, not everyone on the left side of this diagram is going to resonate with that, but we thought that some people would. You know, the sort of darkness and sort of mystical quietude that we're trying to capture here is there. Notice that in this particular one, this is not like hugely theological. You know, reconnect with God, you know, does not have tons of complicated $10 theological words. You know, and to prepare for Christmas, we chose to talk about the holiday rather than the person, right? Like that's one strategy. You know, there may be other ways to do it. You know, to prepare for the coming of Christ, I think resonates with a slightly different subset of the people that we're talking about there. You know, I think most of these folks that we have in our heads, you know, are probably unchurched, dechurched kind of folks. You know, with others, you know, to prepare for the coming of Christ might be a much better way to say that. You know, I had a preaching professor who said to me, you know, there's no cost-free sermon strategy. You know, like we're always making trade-offs, right? And that's true here. That's true here as well. Now, you know, this ad worked pretty well, sort of numbers-wise. We did pay to promote it. Those would be really impressive numbers if we hadn't. But this is kind of like what this church is known for. So that's kind of what I'm trying to get at. Like we had some people, to go back here, you know, we had some people we were trying to reach with a Christian message, and the way we experience that Christian story and Christian practice is in this particular way. And you know, within that intersection are some opportunities to craft a message in an appropriate way. Is this exercise helpful? Are you sort of tracking with the line of thinking here? Okay. Let's see. So I pulled a couple. I thought we could reverse engineer this and try to identify audience and how did I label that? Oh, sort of who are they and who are you, or who are they and what do you say to them? With a couple of other examples. So this is from the National Cathedral. This was an event that they had posted. Circle of meditation and healing, turn shame and guilt into love. In case you're having a hard time reading some of the text, I'll read the first couple sentences of this paragraph. Remember a time as a child when you did something and an adult shamed you? Remember a time when you did something you regret that made you feel guilty? Join modern mystical author Susan Bileby Maggie as she leads a visualization to remember and release shame and guilt and replace them with light and love. Walk in the sunlight, radiating your own light into the world. All spiritual seekers are interested in exploring a range of meditations, and consciousness-raising practices are welcome. No experience necessary, etc. So what do we know about who they're trying to reach? This one's not rocket science.
People who watch TED Talks.
People who watch TED Talks. There you go. That's a very buyer persona-y kind of a statement, right? You know, TED Talk Ted, you know, is who they're reaching, or a TED Talk Tina. That's what these stupid buyer persona names sound like. But yeah, that's that's good. Other ways of characterizing or things we know about who they seem to be trying to reach.
The silently hurting.
The silently hurting. Yeah.
Yoga moms.
Yoga moms. Okay. Yeah.
People that are unaffiliated with a particular denomination.
Yep. Unaffiliated, right? Yeah. This is all about spiritual practice, but there's, you know, in this case, there's not a lot here that someone who either doesn't have a church background is going to be puzzled or you know, confused about, and nothing presumably that someone who's maybe had a bad experience of church, and one wonders if some of what they're getting at here might be related to church-related trauma. Who knows? Or it could be a piece of that. Nothing there either. So this is casting a broad kind of net. Maria?
I just wanted to comment, going back to what you just said about there not being a cost-free strategy. I read that and I went, really? That National Cathedral, that is so not the core of our faith.
Yeah.
I'm not the person they're trying to reach.
Mhm.
You know, if
Yeah.
they were reaching me, they wouldn't be reaching
Mhm.
for people.
Yes, yes, and that's why this gap is so hard, and that's why I said on Twitter, replying to something Nuria had said and Lisa Brown was asking about, I do think your current members are probably your most important audience. That doesn't mean they are the ones. Oh yeah, I said earlier that. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, sorry.
No,
what am I
pastors
supposed-
through energy.
Yesterday when I did this, we were hearing better in the room because there weren't as many people in it, so I got out of the habit. Sorry. She pointed out the no cost free strategy thing. She read this and she thought, this doesn't resonate with who I am as an Episcopal Christian, and then realized, oh wait, I'm not the person they're trying to reach with this exercise. And I think that's exactly right. That ultimately not just with the marketing materials, but with the actual thing. You know, like this particular piece of programming was not designed for the audience that Nuria is part of. And that's okay. I replied on Twitter to someone, you know, that I said earlier, and I think Meredith's right about this, that your primary audience is your current members. That doesn't mean that you spend the most time and energy trying to reach them. They're a lot easier to reach. You know a lot about them. The gap is narrower. It's maybe, as Albert points out, it's maybe not as narrow as we think, but it's narrower than how we reach people that are not currently our members, because we know less about them in most cases. That just wanted to connect that back.
Where does the mission
Sue
play
has some comments.
into it? Building on what Nuria said.
Yeah.
I had a third
Where
circle that
does-
would say mission, and that would make this
Yeah.
a bit smaller.
Sue's saying, where does mission fit into this? Yeah, I'm not sure that this is a perfect diagram. You know, I think there is. Sorry, you're going to get a 2-minute sermonette here, and I can send you to a link. I wrote a little think PC obnoxious blog post 4 or 5 months ago, I think, about what church culture can learn from startup culture. And I think what's really interesting about startup culture is this idea that they put something out there and they work really hard to get a few people using it. And then based on what the people who are using it do with it, they allocate their energy to revise the thing, and then you know, put out the next version and have that. So I think, you know, it might be the case that sort of mission is in conversation with this, hopefully in a sort of cyclic way. I mean, I always say when you're trying to launch something new, you know, do a little pilot. Don't spend all of your effort, you know, for months and months and months planning something that, you know, that maybe no one's going to come to anyway. You know, get it out there, start it, do it, see how it goes, iterate. You know, iterate is you know, sort of word. What do they say? Test, build, test, rebuild. There's a bunch of different ways of talking about this. But so yeah, I think, you know, there's I didn't want to go down the mission statement rabbit hole, but you know, there's probably a version of how one would approach this talk to say that you have to start there, and that's probably true, but that's not how I've approached it here. Chris, never mind from the webinar.
They answered it themselves.
So they answered it themselves.
Where can we find your blog post?
Awesome. I don't know. Google Kyle Oliver. It's on. I think it's on. If it's not on the eFormation blog, it's on Key Resources. I think Google Kyle Oliver Church Learn from Startup. Did you find it?
No.
Okay, I'll look for it and post it. Next time we pause for an exercise, I'll look for it. I'm not saying it's like genius or anything. I just like, to me, that sort of cyclical thing where like the mission informs the thing that we do, the audience that shows up and does it informs you know, how we talk about it next time, et cetera, et cetera. There's a sort of so I guess we're sort of assuming here a kind of clarity about mission. Jim Naughton teaches a great workshop called Before You Say a Word, and that's really about you know, this very problem that, you know, as a high-level church consultant, communications consultant, he you know, issue he sees all the time is that people are trying to do strategy and they don't have any clarity about their mission. That's a little less in my wheelhouse, so I'm going to assume you have some clarity about that. But I'm sorry, what was that? Sorry.
Just quoting a friend of mine, ready, fire, aim.
Ready, fire, aim. Yeah. No, I think that's a constant temptation, and I think I mean, my opinion is that that's like cyclical too, but that's another story here, and a little outside of my wheelhouse. We've explored this exercise well enough here. So I want you now to write a sentence about your church or something that's happening or whatever for one of your audiences. So clearly the people who made that website, have an audience, clearly, I mean, we saw lots of children, families, are a priority there. That suburban family thing we filled in may well be a very appropriate audience for this congregation. So think about either, think about if you're writing a sentence or two for a paragraph like this, or think about, like we saw in the in those event example earlier, you're doing a particular, promoting a particular event, and just write a sentence or two with one of those personas in mind, one of those audiences. And we'll workshop them and get in touch with how hard this exercise is. So take put another 5 minutes on the clock, and we'll do that. All well in the webinar. Oh. Everybody have this question? You mind if I search around for that article I said I would look for? Okay, see you later. Yeah. What's the headline?
Yeah.
Oh.
I did kind of all over startup church, and it was on hall.
Yeah, sorry, it was a misleading. A prototyping mindset for ministry, it's called.
Those are 2015. That's like getting the background.
Oh, gotcha. The prototyping mindset for ministry. I wrote it at Whole Foods.
Oh, you just bought in whole.
What's that?
You just bought in whole part of it.
So
The pretentious thing you're saying.
oh, gotcha. Well, no, that's just where I was in New York. You got to work where you can find a place to work, and I was at the cafe at Whole Foods. Had a meeting, an hour away from my house. Gonna.
I'm trying to think of yeah. Is she, this issue?
Yeah, we're coming up on a minute. Feel like you've had a chance to write a sentence or two? So I find this exercise to be a nice reminder of, like, it's easy for us to like sort of write. But when someone says write one sentence to this very specific audience that communicates a very specific thing, all of a sudden, like, we slow down. It's like, oh, maybe, and like, I'm guilty of this all the time. Maybe I'm on autopilot most of the time when I'm communicating, and I'm not thinking very much about my audiences. That may be unique to me, but I doubt it. Somebody want to take a stab at a sentence? Please.
Our approach to life is positive, progressive, and rooted in the Anglican spiritual tradition.
I don't know why I'm typing into a search box. Our approach to life is... I'm not going to search it. I couldn't figure out a place to hang on.
Positive.
This is dumb. Let me do something different.
Our approach to life is positive, progressive, and rooted in the Anglican spiritual tradition.
Okay, so break that down for us. Why'd you go there?
Because we minister in an area that is heavily influenced by a very conservative and doctrinaire approach to Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
And we're trying to reach the spiritual but not religious.
Mm-hmm.
So we wanted them to know that we're not going to indoctrinate, but we are going to talk about a particular spiritual tradition.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Got it. So really this whole, sorry, I was going to make comments, but maybe that's so in some ways you're writing both to the people you're trying to reach and sort of in counter-distinction to the wider area, right?
To show them we're something different if you want to check us out.
Yeah. So making it clear what's sort of distinctive. What's the level of sort of churchiness in this area? Pretty high, I'm assuming, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, my only query for this, I think these are great words that communicate something over against exactly what you're saying. I always wonder, we've got to say something about a denomination somewhere. I try to be very careful about where I choose to say it. If there's going to be 3 or 4 sentences, maybe I move this word that probably most people don't know somewhere else, a little further along, or I offer some explanation for it. And both Social Media Gospel and Speaking Faithfully have lots to say about this issue of insider church words, which are very, very hard to root out of our writing. That's the only one as someone who doesn't know the Episcopal Church. That's the only one that I don't know what it means. And so maybe you define it, maybe it comes later, lots of different approaches. Chris?
Webinar, a creative, flowing, ever wondering, always loving, Christ-centered church family.
A creative,
flowing, ever wondering,
always
loving,
Christ-centered
church family.
Christ-centered church family. Interesting. Yeah, flowing was what jumped out at me. Could you say more about flowing? I like it. And I think I know what it means in this setting, but I'm curious.
We are messy.
We're messy. Interesting. Okay. Okay. Huh.
We make mistakes and it's okay.
We make mistakes and it's okay. Yeah. So synonyms might be spontaneous, playful, adventurous. I mean, I'm not saying flowing is wrong, but that jumped out. Ever wondering. I like this notion. Ever wondering. I think in the same way that positive and progressive does. To me, I think we can bring our questions, right? Like we're a community that is inquisitive. I think that's great. Please, Carrie.
Mine's for a specific event.
Okay.
Just prelude that. It's for a pride panel.
Okay.
Called Intersections on Faith, Race, and Sexuality. So it's
okay.
Got questions. We probably don't have the answers, but we can talk about it.
Got questions. We probably don't have the answers, but we can talk about it.
On race, faith, and stuff.
Yeah. Gotcha. Cool. So there's an openness there that I'm hearing. There's a, you're trying to reach people who don't want to be lectured at, but want to be engaged in a conversation. Sounds like. Yeah. Cool. Jennifer.
Mine said it's for a specific event also.
Okay.
Which would be an event for stewardship directors in churches.
Okay.
Connect with other stewardship directors for a curated roundup of tools and strategies for your ministry.
For a curated roundup of
tools and strategies for your ministry.
Tools and strategies for your ministry. Cool. I hear, very practical. I'm going to leave this thing with tools in my hand. I'm going to learn from other people who do the same work that I do, very clear about who this is for. So, certainly zeroed in on your audience there. This set, Sarah Stewardship, has a job to do and wants to do it better. Cool. This, you want to do one more? Yeah, Michael, please. Yeah.
Give a couple of hours to help build a future for those who need you most.
Give a couple of hours to help build a future for those who need you most. So there's something there about the stakes of this. This is important work.
But it doesn't take you long.
Yeah. A little bit of time can make a big difference. So it's, this is for people for whom service is really important, but maybe they struggle to find the time to do it. I'm imagining any number of constituencies where that might really resonate. This process of doing just a couple of very direct, targeted, intentional sentences, I think can be really, really useful. Once you kind of get the hang of doing these, then your job becomes easier as you go along. You sort of workshop, you modify. Jennifer, yours really resonated with me. We honed that phrase for e-formation for a pretty long time. Big picture inspiration and hands-on practical tips or something. I'm not spitting it out exactly right, but there's two things. There's not 50 things, there's two things, and inspiration, hands-on. Those were sort of our operative words, and you all are the ones who responded to that, right? And you're sitting here typing on your computers, and there's one. This is a vulnerable activity. I want to make sure I'm engaging as well. So this experience of getting feedback from someone else, I think this is really, really useful. In the same way that Albert talked about doing surveys and doing interviews and stuff, just workshopping a sentence or a paragraph with a couple, and maybe some church friends and some non-church friends. If who you're trying to reach are unchurched folks, like run this by someone you know. I know a lot of ministers who, in Keith Anderson's Digital Cathedral book, you can tell that the guy who runs the pub where Keith does pub theology, you can tell he really likes giving Keith feedback on the stuff that Keith is doing, and maybe it's not for him, but you may have some friends who are willing to engage you in this exercise, and getting a sense for how something reads, how something comes across. I mean, you can see the range of interpretations we all had for some of that. This is just hugely important. Questions before we keep moving? Okay. So how do you get going on all this? If there's one thing I've both learned and ignored over and over again, and sort of slowly made painstaking progress, is the importance of having a communications calendar. Especially, no, I'm not even going to say especially if you work with a team, even and maybe especially if you're an individual mostly doing this work, you need a communications calendar. That doesn't mean it will always be rigidly adhered to, but if you're not setting those goals, boy, it's just hard to get this stuff out. I want to show this video, not because I necessarily think you should buy this WordPress plugin, but because some of the features that are demonstrated in this plugin, I think get to, when we call this an integrated communications planning workshop, we're going to start to get at the integration here. So let me show the video and we can talk more.
There's an all-in-one editorial calendar for WordPress. I'm Garrett, and I'm going to show the top 5 features of CoSchedule. Don't go anywhere. It will only take 2 minutes.
Sorry, we're going to redo this once the computer.
Amazing features of CoSchedule is that you can create your social media messages while you blog. Social messages are customized for all of your networks and then sent in the future.
Sorry, let's wait for the computer to catch up to us.
Finally, there's an all-in-one editorial calendar for WordPress. I'm Garrett, and I'm going to share the top 5 features of CoSchedule. Don't go anywhere. It will only take 2 minutes. One of the most amazing features of CoSchedule is that you can create your social media messages while you blog. Social messages are customized for all of your networks and then sent in the future once your blog post goes live. This is a huge way to bring consistent traffic to your blog. So many bloggers have told me that they just want to see everything in one place. Well, CoSchedule makes this easy by placing your blog posts and your social media messages on a unified drag and drop calendar. Now, you can finally visualize your blog for the first time. The job of an editor has often been compared to herding cats. Well, no more. CoSchedule allows you to assign tasks to your team and keep them on track. It also facilitates conversation and issues reminder notifications when necessary. Imagine what would happen if your team finally had a usable workflow. CoSchedule is all about putting your most valuable tools in one place. We integrated with the most important social networks, including Buffer and Google+, and we put them into WordPress, the world's most popular publishing platform. Now, all of your tools are in one place for the first time. Obviously, you can save a ton of time with CoSchedule. Most of our users tell us that they blog more, schedule more social media messages, and get more traffic. The bottom line, CoSchedule makes you a better blogger. Blog more, schedule more social media messages, get more traffic, and save time.
Whole lot of promises in there, huh?
Yeah. This is a great comment from the webinar. wow, I think I'm excited. I may be overwhelmed, but I think I'm excited.
That sounds about
I'm
right.
just glad that it's finally gonna get my Google Plus content.
Yeah, I know. I need it on the important platforms. Damn it! That's. I think maybe part of that was about some of these tools weren't at the time integrating with Google Plus. Now it's sort of who cares. So let me make a couple comments about that. I mean, obviously they're going to make big promises because they're selling you a plug-in for your plugin. How much?
$15 a month.
$15 a month, yeah. So I mean, not nothing, but also not exorbitant. It could be the tool for you. I'm not advocating the tool. I've never used it, but it makes a couple of really important points. Hang on, let me go back to here. Makes a couple of really important points, including getting it in one place, having a system for communicating. It's not going to make blogging any less like herding cats, right? Like you're probably going to have to send a follow-up email to someone to remind them. When I get automated reminders to do things from other people, they've put me into an automated reminder system and I get it. I don't particularly listen to it, but when the person on the other side of the email has sent me an email saying, hey, it's really important to me that you do it, that's what gets me going. I mean, trying to coordinate volunteers to do work, or even paid staff people to do work, is just inherently relational. So I don't think this is going to solve that, but I like that it sets up procedures and policies. Finally you'll have a usable workflow. Well, whether you use a tool like this or not, you need a workflow. You need a plan for how things sort of move through the system. Comments, Suzanne?
Does this apply if I'm the only one who's blogging?
Does this apply if I'm the only one who's blogging? I mean, it sounded like they were saying even some solo bloggers found this useful. I mean, being able to move posts around on a calendar, I think is pretty powerful. I mean, to me, the notion, you heard them talking about, you write the blog and then you write your social messages about it and you save them all and you let it go. I mean, I do think that's a powerful notion. I hate auto reposters. Every time I see a tweet that ends in ... fb.me/blah blah blah, I just want to strangle people. I would rather you not post to Twitter than get an auto post to your, and that's my personal opinion, that probably the auto post has some value or people wouldn't do it. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a metrics expert, so you're getting some experience and some gut from my advice here. But what I like about that is, okay, I wrote the blog post, and there really should be 5 or 6 tweets that promote that blog post, right? Like Twitter is so of the moment that one single tweet is only gonna reach a very small segment of your followers on Twitter. So it's a great practice to spread that out. And the thought that you could write it and then load a bunch of tweets in a way that will look attractive manually. There's lots of ways to set up a system to do all of this work. But what I like about this video is it sort of shows you what one system might look like. Does that make sense? Was there something over here? I mean, Scott, were you going to say something earlier? Oh, sorry, I thought you were. Okay, gotcha.
I was thinking earlier, I was agreeing with you on that cross-posting.
Oh yeah. Oh, gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Scott was agreeing on the not cross-posting thing. It just, if you want to reach people on the other platform, use the native language of that platform, right? I mean, these are dialects on these different tools, and it'll be obvious if you're not speaking them. So let's look. What I tried to do here is. I want to...
Finally, there's an all-in-one editorial calendar for WordPress.
Oh, duh, sorry.
I'm Garrett, and I'm going to share the top 5 features.
We're not going to watch it again. I forgot. I thought this link was going to this. Okay, so here is not a fancy calendar, and I'm not usually like this. I wish I were like this. This was me sitting down and saying, like, this, I should have a calendar. It shouldn't all be in my head. So here is a bunch of products that you are going to, communications products that you're going to see from the CMT in the next 2 weeks. At the end of this time period, I'm going on vacation for 3 weeks. So it's very important to me that I stay organized. So you can see I've got this like ID number over here just so I can cross-reference. Here are the different bits of communication I have to create. When's it due? When will it publish? Has it started? Who's going to do it? Who's going to edit it if it's someone different? Who's it for? What is it saying? What do I need to know about? What's the sort of, when I say method, using Julie's language, I kind of mean like, what's the sort of approach? You know, oh, we want to do a conversational video about this, et cetera, et cetera. What does this tie into? Is this a tweet that is promoting, or a Facebook post that is promoting a particular blog post, et cetera, et cetera. You know, this isn't a lot of fun to read, and it gives me hives looking at it. But this is the kind of thing that you know, that you need, especially if you're working on this as a team, right? I'm maxing out memory on this machine here. So I gave you a blank one of those in the next. Sorry, I keep forgetting to switch back here. So there's a blank one that I hope will be helpful. I actually think integrated communications planning, I mean, obviously we spent most of our time on the early stuff. The late stuff I think is not rocket science, actually. Like, it's about getting organized. And it's about communicating with your team. It's about deciding what kinds of content work on which platforms, and about sort of remembering to follow through on it. You know, for individual channels and platforms, you can, as Meredith points out, you know, you can Google around for good advice about the best time to post something, or the best dimensions of a photo, or, you know, y'all don't need me to stand here and break down, you know, the details, partly because the details are always changing. And there's no way we could do it for a bunch of different platforms. But at its core, right, you have some things you're trying to accomplish. You have some messages that you want to send to certain people in a certain way, and your job is just to get organized. If you're like me, you are intimidated by all the things on that list, and you don't want to have to see the list. So join a team, pray for each other, work on one thing at a time, and deal with the fact that the list is going to help you more than it's going to hurt you. I just think, you know, you probably don't need every tweet on that list. And there's a place, you know, all those tweets, that's probably a place where software really is going to help you, right? Whether you're using that editorial calendar, whatever, what was it called? CoSchedule. Whether you're using CoSchedule or Buffer or Hootsuite or TweetDeck, or like whatever it is you're using to manage social media content that is pushing people to your other products that you're making, your articles, your ads, your, you know, newsletters, your schedules, whatever it is that you're trying to get across to folks. Having something that can, when you create the piece, you can then go ahead and create the corresponding social media stuff and get it scheduled, and then not have to think about it. That's a huge benefit. And so, you know, I thought, I've seen some blogs that, let me go back to, sorry, apparently I'm really pushing the machine hard here. You know, I had a separate line for like social media posts related to this thing. Maybe you've got 3 or 4 columns that are tweet number 1 at the time of posting, tweet number 2 at, you know, and you write those things, and then you post your product, you schedule your tweets, and then you can, you know, put your hands off. But this thing of using social media to promote the in the cases where you're promoting a blog post or promoting an announcement on your website or promoting a registration form, whatever it is, figuring out a way to not be thinking about your communications all the time is really important. So using one of those scheduling tools for the social media side of all this, I think is pretty important, especially if Twitter's a big part of your strategy. And it may not be, but it's so of the moment. Facebook, you've got a longer time horizon on the things you post. That's, in a sense, that's all. Am I still locked up? Oh, this is not good. Hang on, let me get some more tabs closed. Ooh, okay. Are they, Chris, is the webinar audience still with us?
Yeah.
Okay, they can still hear me? I don't seem to have any control over my slides anymore. That's kind of existential at this point. Hang on, let me look at where I'm going and I might be able to just talk through it. We're almost done, obviously. It's close to closing time here. We're gonna spend the whole rest of our time switching if we try to switch computers. So I'm gonna just talk you through the rest of the way. Sorry about that. Those of you who have access, can kind of look. Are we gonna get caught up here? This is so interesting, like what I have control of and what not. Oh, all I can really do is switch between windows. All right, sorry for this fail. I clearly should have managed my memory better. Okay, so last piece, we've talked about the sort of calendaring aspect of this. So finally, I want to talk just a little bit about products. So let's see. If you're in the room, you can try to look on with somebody who has the slides open if you can. I'll kind of show them to the webinar audience here. We're really improvising. Chris, how's my visual here? They've got the slides open, right? Okay, all right. That's Chris had to give a whole presentation a couple months ago with a document camera pointed at his screen because of a total dongle fail that was not our fault. Remember we were doing that boot camp? Oh yeah. Sorry. Okay. So let me just talk you through. The next thing is part of a larger infographic that I kind of like. I just want to make a few comments about your actual communications products at this point. The first one is this font thing. The headline on the blog post that it points to is, what does your font choice, everything's going slow. What does your font choice say about you and your document? So the ones I've got there are too lazy to change the default, old-fashioned and boring, sophisticated and intelligent. These are all different fonts, right? Either helplessly cliche or from the planet Pandora. That's the one using papyrus. Tacky and trying too hard. Culturally insensitive. Simple, accessible, and clear. So clearly you're hearing about the person who put this together, their font preferences, but they're pointing out that, the style of your product, as we've been sort of saying all along, encodes some messages about you. And so it's important to think about that. And if you don't have good instincts for what messages it sends, that's a good place to seek some editorial guidance from others. The next thing is something I wanted to say. I don't know if your church needs a style guide or not. I mean, if you are a communicator, chances are you've worked at some point along the line for a newspaper or a magazine or something, and you know all about style guides, either things like the AP style guide or the Chicago Manual of Style, or in-house kinds of things. A sort of comprehensive style guide to me, if you're a publisher, obviously you're gonna need something like that. If you are if you're a church with 2 or 3 people working on the communications, to me, it's going to take you so long to create a style guide that it just feels like a lot of time off mission to me. But what I do think you need is consistency, right? And some guidelines. I'm much more about guidelines than about a comprehensive document that will make every decision for you. You know, the AP style book will tell you, you know, how to use very specific words and phrases all the time. I don't think your church probably needs that, but it would sure be helpful if the way you communicated were reasonably consistent. So 1 to 3 page guideline documents go a really long way. I love creating little 1 page. For the badges, you know, we're going to try to recruit some of you to work with us on designing some digital badges. We have like a 1.5 page badge creation guidelines document that sort of says, here are the 5 headings for every badge. Here are the kinds of things we want you to ask people to do. Obviously, it's not a style guide, it's a sort of design guide. But you know, if you can communicate your policies in a 1.5 pages or so, I think you actually have a chance of getting people on board with those policies. You're hearing my pragmatist here, clearly. I shared with you a couple of links to these kinds of guideline documents. I shared the one for key resources, the CMT's blog, for Building Faith, the website that we run. I like this one more or less for Diobites, which is the submission guidelines if you want to get something in the online newsletter of the Diocese of California. It's very, very detailed, and pros and cons there. In some ways, I think it discourages posting things because you've got to work very hard to get it in the right format. On the other hand, it is very sustainable, right? Because what you get from people, you can look at it, yes, this follows the format, copy, paste, spell check, go. You know, so, you know, maybe you want to split the difference, but I like that that document knows what it wants and it tells you what it wants, and it demands that you conform to that or not get something posted in that newsletter. It doesn't actually take that long. I did it the other day. I think this is the last slide here. Something I want you to think about, again, in the integrated part of integrated communications planning, is how are the things that you're creating, these communication products, blog posts, bulletins, announcement sheets, all the things church communicators you know, are using all the time. How are these actually helping you build community or helping you towards some other missional objective of your congregation? Again, a lot of times we get so caught up in communicating the who, what, where that we forget about the why. I love this guideline in Speaking Faithfully that, like, the most important thing to do in any item in a church newsletter that's promoting an event is answer the question, why should I come to this event? You know, and you probably shouldn't say why you should come to this event, but sometimes that would be better than what we get instead, which oftentimes does not make a very good case. So as you're creating these things, just think about how are they helping you toward these goals. They can really narrow the gap, but if the why that got you started doesn't make sense, that's kind of this whole thing about mission that we were talking about earlier, then the whole thing sort of falls apart. So be ever mindful of that. So again, here's my sort of map. Oh, sorry, I keep forgetting you can't see. But that's it. We're technically at time, but if anyone wants to ask a quick question or two, I think we could probably do that. Or we could all go to dinner.
Is there a destination, a blog post, a book to read that will help me? I understand about scheduling and integrating. That's really useful and important. But to define, for example, in my community, I don't think I've got a high Twitter usage, except for some teenagers.
Yeah.
I got Pinterest and Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So to sort of be conscious about like inside baseball for me to overhear you guys talking about the appropriateness of different kinds of language and certain kinds of posts.
Yeah.
So is there some kind of place to do that, or do I just always go online and see what's the current
So
exercise, et cetera, like.
is there some kind of master place for discovering guidelines about the different tools and maybe also the demographics of who's using them?
Right.
Yeah. There are. I'm not an expert in that. I mean, I usually just Google things. If you use something like Canva, which is a graphics program, there's a class on Canva tomorrow. They have defaults built in for all the different picture sizes and that kind of thing. Some of it you can only learn by doing. You know, I saw a little bit of Lori's Twitter thing earlier, and she made the great point that like you're probably not going to create super effective tweets until you become a somewhat proficient Twitter user. So some of it's about just choosing if you're the sole communicator, and hopefully no one's the sole communicator, but find the things that you like and that you're good at. Scott?
Yeah, I was just going to say that the Pew Research
Oh,
Center
yeah.
has internet demographics.
Yeah.
Who uses which platform.
Yeah.
And there's a link to that in the handout from my Twitter talk.
Cool. So the handout from Scott's has the Pew demographic stuff, and I'll second that. It's really great by age, the demographic stuff. Pew's a great source, and there are some other ones. The marketing world is often pretty on top of this because this is important stuff to them. Google is good. Probably others if you ask it, especially on the church social media hashtag CHSOCM. Those folks are all over some of this stuff.
This is a final. Linda Tyson says, Kyle, as a marketing communications professional for 20 plus years in my formal life, please know that you have done an outstanding presentation on integrated communications planning.
Oh, well, thanks. Sue, let's let that not be the last word.
Udemy has a lot of social media marketing courses.
Udemy?
Super cheap, and they're all done in a way that you would use if you were marketing via social media.
Cool. Udemy or I don't know how you say it, like Academy, but with a U at the front, is good. I really like Creative Live. They'll give you access to like a whole day-long course on any number of these topics. Oh shoot, did that? Oh, you just lost. Oh, you're still on. You're fine. I keep forgetting this is not the only computer on it. So Creative Live is a good place to go if you really want to go deep on one of these. But Google around, use your judgment, and some of the really big picture stuff is in some of the books I talked about. Meredith's book has a why use. The middle section is why use platform ? And there's like 15 chapters on all the different platforms, and that can help you get some clarity about we can skip this one, we really need this one, etc. That's probably the first place to go. And I'm pretty sure she refers out to some of the more data heavy resources. So if you buy that book, that's maybe a good start. Okay.